May the cold consume them and the forest devour them. The millionaire stepmother whispered with an icy smile, the sound of her hurried footsteps muffling the desperate cries of the twins abandoned in the damp darkness of the woods. The biting wind lashed their small, feverish bodies as the woman walked away, her designer shoes crunching on dry leaves, silencing the last thread of hope. But amidst the despair, a pair of amber eyes watched from the shadows, and a deep roar, which shook the ground, announced that the forest had its own plans. The deep roar, which shook the ground, was not a threat, but a profound warning, a declaration of ownership over the life the forest harbored. The two twin boys, trembling with cold and fear, huddled even closer together, their large, feverish eyes searching the darkness for the source of that powerful sound. A pair of amber eyes, which had previously watched from the shadows, now materialized into an imposing striped body, moving with silent grace among the trees. It was a majestic tiger, its orange and black fur almost invisible in the dim light, but its presence was undeniable, warming the air with a vital force that contrasted with the biting cold of the night. The animal approached slowly, each step measured, without haste, without aggression. The boys, their hearts beating erratically in their chests, awaited their end, their dry lips unable to utter a sound. But the tiger had not come to devour. Instead, it stopped a few inches from them, lowering its massive head. Its snout gently touched the cheek of one of the boys, a rough yet surprisingly soft touch, like an unexpected caress. The scent of the forest, of damp earth and something wild yet not hostile, enveloped them. The boy coughed weakly, and the tiger recoiled slightly, with an expression that seemed almost concerned in its deep eyes. With a careful movement, the tiger lay down beside the little ones, its warm, soft body offering a shield against the icy wind. One of the twins, the weaker one, extended a trembling little hand and touched the striped fur. It was softer than he imagined, and the heat radiating from the animal was a balm for their feverish bodies. Slowly, the tension in the boy's shoulders eased. The fear did not completely disappear, but a strange sense of security began to settle in, like a timid sunbeam breaking through dark clouds. The tiger, the true guardian of those lands, had found the little ones before death did. It watched them with almost human attention, as if it understood the fragility of their lives. With the tip of its snout, it gently nudged them, encouraging them to nestle closer to its body. And so, under the fierce and unexpected protection of the beast, the twins fell asleep, the sound of the tiger's powerful heart acting as a lullaby. When the sun began to peek through the leaves, painting the forest with golden hues, the tiger rose with surprising delicacy. With its mouth, it gently took the collar of one boy's small shirt, lifting him carefully, and then the other, carrying them as if they were precious cubs. The tiger's den was not a dark and cold cave, but a refuge of warmth and safety, lined with dry leaves and soft moss. There, it laid them down, and the heat emanating from its own body and the makeshift nest began to ward off the chill that tormented them. The days that followed were a silent miracle. The tiger hunted, but always returned, bringing small fruits and roots it found, gently nudging them towards the boys, who, with their fever subsiding, began to show small flashes of curiosity and even a faint smile. The beast cared for them with a devotion that defied nature, transforming its den into a sanctuary. Meanwhile, far away in the opulent mansion, the millionaire stepmother could not find peace. The image of the abandoned boys in the forest haunted her thoughts, not from remorse, but from a growing paranoia. What if someone found them? What if they survived and told? The uncertainty gnawed at her icy soul. She needed to be sure that the task was complete, that the unwanted heirs had disappeared forever. Driven by this sickening need, she decided to return to the forest, days later, to confirm the cruel fate she had orchestrated. Her steps, once hurried, were now hesitant, each dry leaf under her designer shoes an echo of her own wickedness. Her heart, as icy as her fortune, beat with an anxiety that was not fear, but a calculating anticipation. Her heart, as icy as her fortune, beat with an anxiety that was not fear, but a calculating anticipation. The stepmother's expensive leather boots sank into the damp earth, each step a reminder of the distance that separated her from the safety of her mansion. The forest air, once a mere detail in her macabre plan, now seemed suffocating, laden with a heavy silence that made her feel watched. She tried to push away the images of the twins' feverish little faces, but guilt, though small, mingled with anger at the inconvenience they represented. It was not remorse that drove her back, but the need for control, the obsession for a clean and definitive end to her scheme. Her eyes, accustomed to the gleam of luxury, strained to penetrate the dense foliage, searching for the exact spot where she had left them. A pang of perverse satisfaction struck her as she imagined the outcome nature had supposedly provided. As she advanced, the vegetation grew thicker. Branches scratched her fur coat, an ironic contrast to the fragility she expected to find. The sun, which barely penetrated the tree canopy, created a play of light and shadow that distorted shapes, making her jump at every sound. Finally, she recognized the clearing. Her heart, which had previously beaten with calculating anxiety, now raced with cruel anticipation. She expected to see the silence of death, the irrefutable proof of her freedom. But what she found made her blood run cold, paralyzing her on the spot. In the center of the clearing, there were no small, fragile bodies. Instead, an imposing, striped form rested, majestic with its head held high. It was the tiger. Its amber eyes, which had previously watched the stepmother's departure, now fixed on her with an intensity that seemed to pierce her soul. The beast was not alone. Beside its warm and powerful body, nestled in a makeshift bed of leaves, were the twins, alive. Their little faces, though still pale, no longer showed the desperate fever, and one of them even managed a sleepy smile, his little hand resting on the tiger's soft fur. The stepmother felt the air thin in her lungs. The scene was surreal, a nightmare that defied all the logic of her meticulous plan. The tiger, the guardian of those lands, had failed in its role as an eliminator. On the contrary, it protected them. Her lips trembled, and a murmur of disbelief escaped. "No, it can't be." Anger and panic began to bubble within her, replacing the calculating anticipation. She had underestimated the forest, and especially the strength of the life it harbored. The tiger, sensing the intruder's presence, rose slowly, its muscular body stretching before positioning itself between the stepmother and the boys. Its eyes did not show immediate aggression, but an unwavering determination, a clear warning that that territory and those lives were under its protection. The stepmother took a hesitant step backward, fear finally settling in her icy chest. The sight of the beast, so close, so real, was far more terrifying than any ghost of guilt that had haunted her. She tried to rationalize, to seek an explanation, but the image of the boys, safe beside the wild animal, was irrefutable. It was then that the tiger let out a roar. It was not a hunting roar, nor a blind rage, but a deep, vibrant sound that seemed to emerge from the very bowels of the forest. It echoed through the trees, resounding through valleys and hills, a primal cry that carried the truth of what had happened there. The entire forest seemed to respond, birds flying in a flock, other animals silencing. It was a call, an alert, an unmasking. The stepmother felt the impact of the sound in her chest, as if nature itself were judging her. Her face paled, and she recoiled another step, tripping over exposed roots. The roar was not just for her, it was for the world, announcing that something precious had been found, and that an injustice was about to be revealed. Fate, with its wild twists, began to weave the next chapter, and the stepmother, for the first time in a long time, felt completely powerless, at the mercy of a force greater than her fortune or her cruelty. Fate, with its wild twists, began to weave the next chapter, and the stepmother, for the first time in a long time, felt completely powerless, at the mercy of a force greater than her fortune or her cruelty. The tiger's roar did not dissipate into the air. It traveled, carried by the wind among the trees, reaching the ears of those who were attentive to the voice of the forest. The stepmother, her heart racing, found herself exposed, her facade of coldness crumbling before nature's silent fury. Her eyes swept the clearing in search of an exit, a place to hide, as icy panic enveloped her. The idea of being discovered there, witness to a miracle that unmasked her wickedness, was more terrifying than any beast. A few kilometers away, Jose, a gray-haired forest ranger with kind eyes, raised his head, his pipe forgotten between his fingers. He knew every sound of that forest and that roar. It was different. It had a resonance that was not of hunting nor of common territorial threat. It seemed like a call, a lament, but also a powerful declaration, a roar that demanded attention. Concerned, Jose picked up his backpack and binoculars, his face wrinkled by age and the wisdom of the woods, and began to follow the sound, his steps firm and experienced on the damp ground. His heart, accustomed to the solitude of the forest, felt a strange urgency. Meanwhile, the stepmother tried to sneak behind a thick tree trunk, her expensive clothes tearing on thorns. She needed to disappear before anyone arrived. The image of the tiger, imposing, protecting the boys, was etched in her mind, a living symbol of her failure. Anger began to mingle with fear, an impotent fury against the fate that dared to thwart her plans. She heard the rustling of approaching leaves, and her body huddled, her face pale and marked by a terror she had never before experienced. Jose, with controlled breathing, approached the clearing. What he saw made him stop, his binoculars slowly falling from his hands. His eyes, which had witnessed many wonders of nature, now saw something that defied comprehension. In the center, the majestic tiger, and nestled against it, two small figures, children, alive. An incredulous and emotional smile appeared on his lips as a solitary tear ran down his face. It was a miracle, a gift from the forest, proof of the goodness that could flourish even in the wildest places. But then, his attentive eyes caught a movement in the shadows, an elegantly dressed female figure trying to hide. The contrast between the scene of wild tenderness and the woman's furtive presence was shocking. Jose felt a tightness in his chest, a painful understanding of what could have happened there. The tiger, sensing the new presence, let out a low, protective growl, its amber eyes fixed on the stepmother, who was now completely exposed. She could no longer flee. The forest ranger took a step forward, his voice calm, yet laden with authority. "Madam, what are you doing here?" The stepmother, trembling, slowly rose, her eyes meeting Jose's, who watched her with a mixture of astonishment and sadness. The tiger's roar, which had previously echoed throughout the forest, now seemed a whisper of justice, and the stepmother knew with a cold certainty that her secret had been unmasked. Nature, in its implacable wisdom, had ensured that the truth would come to light, and the consequences previously unthinkable began to unfold before her eyes. Nature, in its implacable wisdom, had ensured that the truth would come to light, and the consequences previously unthinkable began to unfold before her eyes. The stepmother, whose name was Ilara, felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her thin lips trembled, and the words she tried to form died in her throat. Jose's face, the forest ranger, was a mixture of compassion and a silent severity that Ilara had never faced. She, accustomed to commanding and seeing everyone bow to her will and fortune, was now cornered, unmasked by a roar and the presence of a simple man, yet with unwavering moral authority. "Madam, please explain yourself." José's voice was calm but firm, without a hint of explicit accusation, yet laden with an expectation that Ilara could not ignore. His eyes, however, did not stray from the boys. With a slow and careful movement, José knelt down, maintaining a respectful distance from the tiger, which still watched him with unwavering vigilance. The animal, however, seemed to recognize the kindness in the man's gaze, for it did not growl, merely maintained its protective stance, a silent guardian. Ilara tried to compose herself, her mind frantically searching for an excuse, a lie that could save her from imminent humiliation. I was just looking for them. They got lost. I came to rescue them," she stammered, her voice failing, a stark contrast to her usual composure. But her words sounded hollow even to herself. Her torn fur coat, the panic in her eyes, the absence of any prior search, everything betrayed her. José did not respond directly to the lie. Instead, his gentle eyes fixed on the pale little faces of the twins. One of them, the one with his little hand on the tiger's fur, slowly opened his eyes, blinking against the filtered light. A faint whisper escaped his lips. "Water." The sound was almost inaudible, but José heard it, and his heart tightened. He took a water bottle from his backpack and with the same delicacy offered it, without getting too close so as not to alarm the tiger. The tiger, as if understanding José's intention, moved its head slightly, allowing the boy to reach the bottle. The little one drank eagerly, his eyes still sleepy, but with a glimmer of gratitude. The other twin, sensing the movement, also woke up, and José repeated the gesture, offering water to him as well. The scene of care between the man, the animal, and the children was a balm for José's soul, and a stab for Ilara's, who watched from afar, feeling increasingly small and vile. "Madam, these children are sick and were abandoned," José finally said, his voice now graver but still devoid of fury, only deep sadness. "The forest is no place for such small children, especially alone." He needed no further proof. The tiger, beside the boys, was the most eloquent testimony of all. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine, not from the cold of the forest, but from the coldness of the truth that struck her. Her plan, so carefully orchestrated, had fallen apart before the most improbable of protections. The image of her reputation, of her life of luxury crumbling, was almost unbearable. She clenched her hands, her nails digging into her palm. There was no denying it. There was no escaping. José, with a determined look, knew that his priority was the children's rescue. "I need to take them to a safe place so they can receive medical care, and you'll have to come with me. There are many questions that need to be answered." He looked at the tiger, giving an almost imperceptible nod, as if asking permission or thanking it. The tiger, in turn, fixed its amber eyes on Ilara, a look that seemed to say, "The forest's justice is slow, but infallible." The stepmother felt the weight of that gaze, and a cold certainty invaded her. Her reign of cruelty had come to an end. The stepmother felt the weight of that gaze, and a cold certainty invaded her. Her reign of cruelty had come to an end. Panic, once a distant wave, now completely engulfed her, suffocating her. Ilara, her face pale and her lips trembling, could not tear her gaze from the tiger, which seemed to read her soul, exposing every layer of her wickedness. She tried to take a step back, but her legs seemed stuck to the damp forest floor. José, the forest ranger, watched the scene with a seriousness that went beyond anger. It was a deep sadness for what he witnessed. "We need to get these children out of here immediately," José said, his voice softer now, directed at the boys, but with an implicit firmness for Ilara. "They need a doctor, warmth, and real food. With slow and careful gestures, Jose knelt near the twins, who were still nestled against the tiger's body. The boys, though startled by the presence of another stranger, seemed to find comfort in the forest ranger's gentle voice. One of the little boys, the one with the sleepy smile, extended a weak little hand towards Jose, a gesture of trust that broke the man's heart. The tiger, as if understanding the urgency, moved slowly to the side, releasing the boys. Its amber eyes, however, remained fixed on Ilara like a sentinel. Jose, with the delicacy of a father, picked up one of the boys. The little body was too light, the fever still present, but the warmth it radiated was a sign of life, a miracle. The other twin, seeing his brother being lifted, also extended his arms, and Jose embraced him with equal tenderness, nestling him against his chest. Ilara watched the scene, a mixture of disbelief and impotent fury bubbling within her. The sight of Jose, a simple man holding the boys with such affection, was a cruel mirror of her own lack of affection. She felt the tiger's gaze upon her, a silent judgment of nature. Shame, a rare feeling for Ilara, began to burn in her cheeks, not from remorse, but from the humiliation of being caught in her vilest act. "Madam, I need you to come with us," Jose said, standing up with the two boys in his arms. His voice was not a request, but an irrefutable command. "There's a police station and a hospital in the nearest town. They need to know what happened here, and the children need care." He began to walk away slowly, guiding himself along the path he knew so well, his steps firm despite the weight of the little ones. Ilara felt a lump in her throat. Her mind, once so sharp at scheming, was now blank, unable to formulate a new lie or an escape plan. She looked at the tiger one last time. The animal was sitting, watching her, its eyes piercing. It was as if the entire forest was watching her, ensuring that justice would be served. With a trembling sigh, Ilara began to follow Jose, her designer shoes sinking into the mud, each step an echo of her downfall. The forest, which she had thought to be her accomplice, had become her judge, and her destiny now was in the hands of a forest ranger, and the truth that the innocent eyes of the twins would one day tell. Jose walked with firm but careful steps, the two small bodies nestled in his arms. The weight was light, but the responsibility was immense. The twins, still pale and fragile, breathed purer air with each meter they moved away from the dark heart of the forest. Jose felt the faint warmth of the boys, a warmth of life that stubbornly persisted, and a wave of tenderness washed over him. He murmured soft words, promises of safety and a doctor who awaited them, while caressing one of their fine hairs with the tip of his chin. Ilara, the stepmother, followed a few steps behind, dragging herself. Her expensive shoes, now mud-stained and scratched, seemed to weigh tons. Every twig that snapped under her feet was a reminder of her failure, of her exposed cruelty. She tried to hold her head high, to maintain a dignified posture, but panic and humiliation were like an invisible weight on her shoulders. Her eyes, once full of cold calculation, now darted away, unable to face the scene of care that Jose offered the boys. Anger bubbled in her chest, an impotent fury against the fate that dared to thwart her. How could a simple forest ranger and a wild animal dismantle her perfect plan? The path was difficult, but Jose knew every root and every stone. He moved with the wisdom of one who lives in harmony with nature, protecting the little ones from any stumble. The boys, though still lethargic, seemed to feel safe in his arms. One of them let out a small sigh, and the other clutched Jose's shirt with a weak little hand, an unconscious gesture of attachment. Jose smiled, a sad smile, but full of hope. Those little beings had endured the unthinkable. The forest began to lighten up a bit, and the first rays of the afternoon sun filtered through more intensely, painting the mossy ground with golden patches. Jose felt a relief, knowing that they were approaching the edge of the world where medical help would be available. He thought of the story he would tell, of the disbelief he would face, but the proof was there, alive and breathing in his arms. It was then that Jose felt something, not a sound, but a presence, an attentive silence that was not the silence of the forest. He stopped, turning slowly, his heart beating with a mixture of apprehension and a strange expectation. There, a few meters away, walking with silent majesty, was the tiger. Its amber eyes, which had been the first to see the boy's despair, now fixed on Jose with a protective intensity. The beast did not growl, did not threaten. It merely followed like a silent guardian who would not abandon his task. Ilara, who also felt the change in the air, looked up and saw the tiger. A muffled scream escaped her lips, and she stumbled backward, falling to sit on the damp ground. Pure terror paralyzed her. The tiger, the animal she had thought to be her accomplice in death, was now her most relentless accuser, following them, a living and undeniable witness to her cruelty. That was too much for her calculating mind. Nature had not only unmasked her, but now accompanied her, ensuring that her truth would be brought to the world. Jose, in turn, felt a wave of awe and reverence. The tiger was not just protecting the boys in the den, it was delivering them, ensuring they arrived safely. It was a miracle that defied reason, a testament to the purest form of altruism. The boys, sensing the presence of their protector, stirred slightly in Jose's arms, and one of them, the stronger one, murmured a small "tiger" with a faint smile, as if bidding farewell to a friend. Jose looked at the animal, and then at Ilara, who trembled on the ground. The proof now was irrefutable. There was no longer any denying it. The forest's justice, slow and relentless, was about to fully manifest in the world of men. Jose continued his way, each step a silent prayer for the little one's recovery. The weight in his arms was the living proof of a miracle, and the warmth of the children's bodies, though faint, was a constant reminder of the fragility and strength of life that stubbornly insisted on flourishing. The twins, exhausted, had fallen asleep again, their pale and serene little faces against the forest ranger's shoulder. Jose felt a deep connection with those children, a tenderness he rarely experienced in his solitary life in the woods. He imagined what he would say in town, how he would explain the unbelievable story of a guardian tiger and a cruel stepmother. He knew that disbelief would be the first reaction, but the truth, he thought, had a peculiar and powerful way of revealing itself. Ilara, a few meters behind, felt the forest floor under her feet like a carpet of thorns, each dry leaf a whisper of condemnation. The initial terror had transformed into a cold and impotent rage. How could everything have gone so wrong? Her mind, accustomed to manipulating and controlling, was in chaos. The tiger, following them like a striped shadow, was the personification of her failure, a constant reminder that nature did not bend to her will, nor to her wealth. She tried to quicken her pace, then slow down, in a vain attempt to distance herself from the beast, but the animal maintained the same distance, its amber eyes fixed on her, a silent and piercing accusation. Ilara felt the forest's judgment in every falling leaf, in every sunbeam that exposed her. The trail began to widen, and the distant sound of a car broke the silence of the woods, a prelude to the outside world, on which Ilara so depended and now feared. Jose felt a tightness in his chest. That was the moment of transition. He looked at the boys, then at the tiger, which stopped at the edge of the forest, as if it knew that its role as a physical guardian was about to end, but its presence as a witness, no. The animal sat majestically, observing the scene with a dignity Ilara would never possess. Jose emerged from the forest, the two boys asleep in his arms, under the afternoon sunlight that bathed the clearing. At the same instant, a pickup truck from a local news crew, investigating a rumor about a wild animal in the region, stopped abruptly on the dirt road. The journalist, a young woman with curious eyes and a camera in hand, got out of the vehicle, followed by her cameraman. Her eyes widened at the sight: a forest ranger, two fragile babies, and just behind, at the edge of the woods, the majestic tiger, imposing and serene. The scene was breathtaking, a tableau that defied logic and reason. The journalist, her voice choked with emotion and surprise, pointed the microphone at José, barely able to articulate the words. "Sir, what is happening here?" Ilara, seeing the cameras, felt her blood run cold. Her worst premonition was spectacularly and irreversibly coming true. The forest's justice had found its megaphone, and the world was about to hear. The tiger, with a last look at the boys, let out a low roar, a sound of solemn warning, of a truth that could no longer be silenced. It then turned and disappeared into the density of the forest, leaving behind the mystery and the irrefutable proof of its goodness. José, his eyes welling up, knew that this was the beginning of a new journey for everyone. The story of the twins and their wild protector was about to be told to the world, a testament to resilience and compassion. Ilara, in turn, was on the verge of collapse, her fortune and her coldness unable to protect her from the avalanche of consequences that loomed. The truth, like a raging river, had found its way, and nothing could contain it anymore. Fate, with its unexpected plots, had finally unfolded the chapter of redemption and punishment, where the cruelty of a woman faced the compassion of nature and the vigilance of the world. The journalist, a young woman with short hair and a vibrant gaze, lowered her microphone for an instant, shock plastered on her face. Her eyes, previously focused on the tiger that had vanished, now fixed on the two sleeping little beings in José's arms. The cameraman, equally stunned, kept the camera pointed, capturing every detail of the surreal scene. Ilara, the stepmother, remained fallen on the ground, her expensive clothes stained with mud, her face a mask of terror and disbelief. The world she had carefully constructed was crumbling before her eyes, and the camera lenses were the irrefutable proof of her imminent ruin. José, with a calm voice laden with an unshakable truth, began to speak. "These are two boys, twins. They were abandoned in the forest days ago, sick. And this tiger..." He paused, looking at the spot where the beast had disappeared. "It protected them. It took care of them." The journalist blinked, trying to process the words. It was a story that defied logic, something out of a fairy tale, but the reality of the fragile bodies in José's arms and the presence of the panicked woman on the ground were undeniable. "Abandoned? By whom, sir? And a tiger took care of them?" she asked, her voice choked. Disbelief mixed with the urgency of a major news story. Her eyes moved to Ilara, who was trying to get up, leaning on a tree trunk, her eyes bloodshot with fury and despair. José did not look away. "That woman there, she left them." The accusation, spoken with the simplicity of truth, struck Ilara like lightning. She let out a muffled groan, trying to deny with a frantic shake of her head, but no words could escape her dry throat. The cameraman approached, focusing on Ilara, who now huddled, trying to hide her face with her dirty hands, shame and fear battling in her gaze. The image of her humiliation, of her cruelty, was being recorded for the whole world to see. The journalist, sensitive to the little one's pain, approached José, her gaze now more compassionate and determined. She noticed the paleness of the boys, their weak breathing, their torn and dirty clothes. "They need urgent medical help," she stated, her voice now full of genuine concern. "We can take them to the nearest hospital. We have a car." José nodded, grateful for the offer. "Yes, that's the most important thing now." He looked at Ilara, who was now dragging herself away, in a desperate attempt to escape, But the cameraman followed her, relentless. "And you will have to come with us. The police need to be informed." The journalist, realizing the gravity of the situation, instructed her cameraman to keep the focus on Ilara, while she herself turned to Jose. "Sir, what is your name? Can we take your statement on the way? The world needs to know this story." "It's a miracle." Jose, with the boys in his arms, began to walk towards the news crew's pickup truck. "My name is Jose. I am a forest ranger." He felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The weight of the boys in his arms was a constant reminder of the responsibility he had taken on. The story was just beginning to be told, and the truth, finally, was coming to light. The pickup truck departed, carrying with it the hope of healing for the twins and the beginning of justice for Ilara. The forest, now silent, seemed to sigh, satisfied at having fulfilled its role as guardian and witness. Fate, with its twists, had ensured that compassion would prevail and that cruelty would not go unpunished. The world awaited, ready to be moved by the saga of the boys and the unexpected kindness of a tiger. The journey of healing and justice was just beginning, and Jose, with his simple and altruistic heart, was the guiding thread of this incredible narrative. The news crew's pickup truck, a robust and noisy vehicle, cut through the dirt road, raising a cloud of reddish dust. Jose was sitting in the back seat, the two twins snuggled in his arms, their hearts beating at a faint but steady rhythm. He could still smell the forest clinging to the boys' clothes, mixed with the subtle warmth of their bodies. One of them, the more deeply asleep, stirred restlessly, and Jose held him more tenderly, murmuring words of comfort that were more for himself than for the child. With each jolt of the truck, he protected them with his own body, a wall of unexpected affection. In the passenger seat, the journalist, whose name was Sophia, had already turned on her recorder. Her eyes, once full of astonishment, now shone with a mixture of professionalism and deep compassion. She looked at Jose in the rearview mirror, then at the boys, and her voice, though firm, carried a sweetness. "Jose, please start from the beginning. Everything you saw, everything that happened, the world needs to know." She didn't want to miss a detail, but her priority was the truth and the urgency of helping those children. Ilara was in the back seat, in the corner opposite Jose, cramped and huddled. The cameraman, a silent and observant man, kept the camera pointed at her, albeit discreetly. Each flash of sunlight through the trees seemed to accentuate the mud-stains on her clothes and the paleness of her face. She tried to look away, but Jose's eyes, reflected in the rearview mirror, and Sophia's voice, echoing condemnation, held her captive. Anger and humiliation mingled in a bitter cocktail, but fear was the predominant flavor. Her heart beat erratically, not from the forest, but from the tribunal that awaited her. Jose, with the calmness nature had taught him, began to narrate. His voice was serene, but the words were laden with contained emotion. He described the call, the search, the silence of the den, the encounter with the tiger and the boys. He spoke of the fever, the fragility, and the fierce protection of the animal. His hands, which once handled axes and ropes, now caressed the twins' hair with surprising delicacy. Sophia listened attentively, making quick notes, occasionally letting out a sigh of astonishment or sadness. "And Miss Ilara?" Sophia asked, her voice soft, but with a tone that allowed no evasions. "Was she there when you found them?" Jose hesitated for an instant, not from doubt, but from sorrow. "Yes, she was there. She said she was looking for them, but the tiger wouldn't let her get close, and the boys were with him." The simplicity of his words was more devastating than any accusation. Ilara felt a shiver down her spine. The lie she had tried to weave in the forest was now stripped bare by undeniable truth. She clenched her lips, her nails digging into her palm, wishing the ground would open up and swallow her. The sound of Jose's voice, so honest, was a direct blow to her facade of innocence. The pickup truck accelerated, leaving the dirt track and entering a paved road. The dense trees began to give way to open fields and soon to the first houses of the town. Civilization was approaching, and with it, justice. Jose felt a relief, but also a pang of sadness. The forest, with its silent guardian, had delivered the boys, but the world of men was a different place, with its own beasts and its own laws. He looked at the little faces of the twins, who were now breathing a little easier. The journey of healing was just beginning, but hope, he knew, was the first step. Ilara, in turn, felt the net closing in. The approaching city lights were like beacons of an imminent judgment. She knew there would be no more escaping. The tiger's roar in the forest had been merely the prelude. Now the whole world would hear the truth, and her life, her reputation, everything she valued, would crumble under the weight of exposed cruelty. Fate, with its implacable irony, had transformed an act of wickedness into a story of miracle, and she was the villain in a tale the world would never forget. The pickup truck stopped in front of the small town's hospital, a modest but welcoming building whose yellowed lights promised refuge. Jose, with the twins still asleep in his arms, felt immense relief at seeing the entrance door, a portal to hope. Sophia, the journalist, quickly jumped out, opening the door for him and calling for help with an urgency that cut through the air. "We have an emergency. 2 children." Her voice echoed through the parking lot, attracting glances. Nurses and a doctor hurried over, their faces initially curious, then alarmed at seeing the small, pale and dirty bodies wrapped in makeshift blankets. Jose handed the boys over to medical care with the delicacy of one who hands over an invaluable treasure. He watched as they were taken inside, his heart heavy, but with the certainty that they were finally on the path to safety and healing. Ilara, still in the back seat, felt the weight of gazes upon her, each like an arrow of judgment. The cameraman, with the camera still on, recorded her huddled figure, her designer clothes now a rag of humiliation, stained by the forest and by shame. The police, alerted by the news report and the gravity of the situation, were already approaching. 2 officers, serious and with notebooks in hand, headed towards the pickup truck. One of them opened the door for Ilara, and she got out, staggering, her eyes darting away from the curious and condemning gazes that surrounded her. The city air, once a refuge for her life of luxury, now seemed to suffocate her with the reality of her actions. Her fortune, her power, everything seemed useless before the undeniable truth unfolding. Sophia, meanwhile, was already beside Jose, recording his detailed statement. He narrated the story with a sincerity that touched the soul, each word a thread of life for the boys. He spoke of the cruel abandonment, the consuming fever, the majestic tiger, its welcoming den, the fierce and unexpected protection that defied logic. His words were simple, but laden with deep emotion, a testament to altruism and the unbreakable strength of human and animal connection. The journalist, her eyes welling up, knew she had in her hands a story that would transcend headlines, a lesson of compassion and overcoming adversity for the world. She already imagined the repercussions, the wave of solidarity that would rise for the boys. Inside the hospital, doctors and nurses worked quickly and with dedication. The twins were examined urgently, their fever controlled with medication, their dehydrated little bodies receiving saline solution. A nurse, moved by the story that was already beginning to circulate, held one of their weak little hands, feeling the fragility of life that had almost been lost. Jose was informed that their condition was serious but stable. "They are true warriors," the doctor said with a tired but hopeful smile. "They were very lucky to be found in time." Jose thought of the tiger, his silent guardian, and knew that it was not just luck, but a miracle that defied any explanation. Ilara was being interrogated by the police in a cold room, her answers evasive and full of contradictions. She tried to maintain her composure, but her voice trembled uncontrollably. Her hands were cold and sweaty. With each question, the web of lies she had tried to build unraveled, revealing the raw and naked cruelty of her heinous act. She looked out the window at the busy street and felt freedom slipping through her fingers like sand. The world, which she thought she dominated with her fortune, now judged her relentlessly. Jose, after giving his statement, was taken to a waiting room, where he awaited news of the boys with palpable anxiety. Sophia sat beside him, turning off the recorder for a moment, her gaze fixed on him. "Jose, what you did, it's extraordinary. You are a hero, an example of kindness." He shook his head, his eyes fixed on the emergency room door, where the boys were. "I just did what was right. The real hero was the tiger. He saved them first." He felt a deep weariness, but a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Justice was beginning to be served, and the boys, he hoped, would have a chance at a dignified future full of love. The city, oblivious to its own routine, was about to be shaken by a story that would speak of unspeakable wickedness and a wild goodness, of almost irremediable losses and an unexpected redemption that was beginning to blossom. The city, oblivious to its own routine, was about to be shaken by a story that would speak of unspeakable wickedness and a wild goodness, of almost irremediable losses and an unexpected redemption that was beginning to blossom. The silence in the hospital waiting room was heavy, punctuated only by the distant beep of medical equipment and hushed whispers. Jose, sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair, felt his hands sweaty and his heart tight. Every minute seemed an eternity as he awaited more concrete news about the twins. He imagined their pale little faces, the small hands that clung to him in the forest, and a wave of protective affection washed over him. Sophia, with her recorder off, but her mind racing, watched Jose. The story he had told was so powerful, so full of contrasts, that she knew it would change lives. She had already made the first contacts with the newsroom, and the on-call team was in a frenzy, preparing the story for the evening edition and the morning news. The image of the tiger, majestic and protective, would be the cover, a symbol of wild hope. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Ilara felt the thin air, each word from the police, like a nail in her coffin of lies. "You claim you were looking for the children, but the forest ranger found them under the protection of a tiger, far from any sign of your active search," said one of the officers, his voice calm but laden with unquestionable authority. Ilara tried to articulate a defense, but the words tangled in her dry throat. Her eyes, once full of arrogance, now darted away, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. She crossed her arms, a useless gesture of self-protection, feeling the weight of guilt crushing her. The image of the boys, fragile and sick, and the tiger's piercing gaze, etched in her mind, were now her cruelest tormentors. The fortune she so valued seemed a useless burden, unable to buy the innocence she had lost, or to silence the truth. Back in the waiting room, a nurse approached Jose, a gentle smile lighting up her tired face. "The boys are stable. The fever has subsided a bit, and the dehydration is being controlled. They still need a lot of care, but the worst seems to have passed." Jose felt a lump in his throat dissolve, and a deep sigh of relief escaped his lips. His eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Can I see them?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. The nurse nodded. "For a moment. They are still very weak, but feeling a friendly presence can aid recovery." Sophia beside him lightly touched his shoulder. "This is the news the world needs to hear, Jose. Hope is being reborn." Jose stood up, his legs a little shaky, and followed the nurse down the corridor. Each step was a silent prayer. Upon entering the room, he saw the two little ones in separate cribs, connected to thin tubes, but with a slightly pinker color in their cheeks. One of them opened his eyes briefly, a faint glimmer of recognition that warmed José's heart. He approached, extending his hand to touch the warm, but now less feverish forehead of one of the boys. A solitary tear ran down his face. That was the true miracle. Proof that goodness, even in the most unexpected forms, would always find a way. Outside, the story of Ilara, of her cruelty and her downfall, began to spread like wildfire. The journalist Sophia, with the story almost ready, felt the urgency to bring the truth to the public, to give voice to those who had none. The city, and soon the country, would unite around the fragility of those twins and the unexpected kindness of a wild guardian, demanding justice and offering a new beginning. Fate, at last, had turned the page, promising that light, however faint, would always find a way to shine, illuminating hearts and revealing the truth. Fate, at last, had turned the page, promising that light, however faint, would always find a way to shine, illuminating hearts and revealing the truth. In the hospital room, José watched the twins. One of them, little Gabriel, opened his eyes again, a deep blue that seemed to carry the wisdom of the forest. He extended a fragile little hand towards José, who held it tenderly, feeling the warmth of life being reborn. The other, Lucas, slept deeply, his breathing more regular, his face serene. The doctor had returned, confirming that the improvement was constant. "They are strong, José, very strong, and your presence here, your voice, makes all the difference." José felt a lump in his throat. Those boys, whom he had found on the verge of death, had nestled into his heart in a way he never imagined. The idea of leaving them was now unthinkable. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, the door opened. The police officers, with serious expressions, informed Ilara of her arrest. The accusations were grave: abandonment of minors, attempted murder. Her world collapsed. She tried to argue. Her voice choked with emotion, but the evidence was irrefutable. Sophia's footage, José's testimony, the boy's own condition. The arrogance that had defined her for so long vanished, replaced by an icy panic. As she was handcuffed, she felt the cold metal on her wrists, a brutal contrast to the expensive jewelry she used to wear. Her eyes, once full of disdain, now reflected only the emptiness of despair as she was led out under the flashes of the cameras that were already waiting for her. Outside the hospital, the news exploded. Sophia, with the story already on air, watched her phone ring incessantly. Social media was buzzing. The story of the abandoned twins and the protective tiger touched the hearts of millions. A wave of indignation against Ilara and solidarity with the boys swept the country. Donations began to arrive, offers of homes, of specialized medical care, of toys and clothes. The world, shocked by the cruelty, responded with overwhelming compassion. The majestic tiger, the true hero, became a symbol of hope and the unwavering goodness of nature. José, upon returning to the waiting room, found Sophia with her eyes welling up. "José, the world is moved. The story of these boys, it's a miracle. And you, José, you are the personification of altruism. What will you do now?" José looked at the door of the boys' room, a gentle smile on his lips. "I'm going to stay with them. I'm going to take care of them. They need a family, love. And I need them." He felt a deep peace. That was his new purpose, his new home. The forest had given him more than he could ever imagine. The community rallied around José and the twins. Lawyers offered to help with the custody process. Neighboring families promised support. Justice for Ilara would be slow but inevitable, and the punishment beyond the legal would be that of conscience and public judgment. The boys, Gabriel and Lucas, would have a second chance, a life full of affection, far from the shadows of greed and wickedness. The human connection, so weakened by cruelty, had been restored, and the overcoming of pain paved the way for a future of hope, proving that in the end, love always finds its way to prevail. Months passed since that eventful night at the hospital, and José's life had transformed in ways he never imagined. The small forest ranger's house, once a solitary refuge, now echoed with the laughter and contagious energy of two boys. Gabriel and Lucas, once fragile and pale, had blossomed under José's loving care and the tireless support of the community. Their little faces, once marked by illness and abandonment, now displayed a healthy glow, their cheeks rosy and their blue eyes full of curiosity and joy. José watched the twins play in the small garden, running after a colorful butterfly. Their movements were agile, their voices melodious. He felt a warmth in his chest, a fullness that surpassed any weariness. This man of the forest, accustomed to quietude and the company of animals, had discovered the deepest of human connections. He crouched down, opening his arms, and the boys ran to him, hugging him with the strength of those who feel safe and loved. José held them close, smelling the scent of earth and childhood, and a discreet tear ran down his face. He was not a father by blood, but a father by heart, and that was all that mattered. José's house had been renovated with the help of volunteers. Donations of clothes, toys, and food arrived daily, a testament to the wave of solidarity that the boys' story had awakened. The journalist Sophia continued to follow the saga, publishing updates that kept the world informed about the twins' recovery and José's dedication. She had become a friend, visiting them whenever she could, bringing books and smiles. The story of the tiger, the silent guardian of the forest, remained alive in everyone's memory, a reminder of the wild goodness that defied human wickedness. As for Ilara, justice, though slow, had prevailed. She was convicted of abandonment and attempted murder, and her fortune, once a shield, could not protect her from the consequences of her actions. She was in a maximum security prison, her life of luxury and power reduced to a cold cell. The public judgment was relentless, and her name became synonymous with cruelty. Her arrogance crumbled, revealing an empty woman, consumed by belated regret and the solitude she herself had orchestrated. Her image, once impeccable, was now that of a villain, and the weight of the truth was a burden heavier than any handcuff. Gabriel and Lucas, oblivious to the darkness that had surrounded them in the past, grew up surrounded by unconditional love. They learned to trust, to dream, to laugh. José told them stories of the forest, of the majestic tiger that protected them, and of the sounds of nature that were once their only solace. He taught them to respect life, to value kindness and the strength of unity. The overcoming of pain had given way to a vibrant hope, and the human connection, so weakened by cruelty, had been restored and strengthened. That was the true happy ending. Not a fairy tale, but a real story of resilience, altruism, and justice. The forest, with its secrets and its guardians, had delivered the boys to a destiny of love. The world, which for a moment was shocked by wickedness, now celebrated the capacity of the human heart to rise again, to forgive and to love unconditionally. José, with his boys in his arms, knew that life, even after the severest storms, would always find a way to flourish, stronger and more beautiful than ever. 2 years had passed since the Araucaria forest delivered its secrets and its little treasures to the world. José's house, which was once a refuge of silence and solitude, had transformed into a vibrant home, filled with laughter and the contagious energy of Gabriel and Lucas. The boys, now 7 years old, were the personification of life flourishing. Their blue eyes, once clouded by illness and fear, shone with the vivacity of those who had discovered the joy of living. Their cheeks were rosy, and their bodies, once so fragile, displayed the strength and agility of children exploring the world with infinite curiosity. Jose watched them from the porch as they played in the garden, transforming dry branches into swords and leaves into crowns for forest kings. His heart filled with an emotion so pure and overwhelming that it sometimes took his breath away. He, the solitary forest ranger, had found a greater purpose, a love that transcended blood and expectations. With each tight hug, with each father pronounced with affection, Jose felt that his own life had been rescued along with theirs. He taught them about the trees, the birds, the rivers, and of course about the majestic tiger that was once their guardian. The story of the protective beast was told and retold, becoming a family legend, a constant reminder of the unexpected kindness that nature can offer. The community, which had rallied around them, never abandoned them. Sophia, the journalist, continued to visit them, no longer in search of a story, but as a dear friend, bringing books and games and discreetly documenting the evolution of that unusual family. The donations had transformed into a fund for the boys' education, ensuring them a promising future. Jose's house, once modest, was now a welcoming home, with colorful rooms and a kitchen always filled with the smell of fresh bread. As for Ilara, her name was now just a whisper of shame and a reminder of justice that, though delayed, always finds its way. She remained in prison, her fortune confiscated, her life reduced to solitude and the weight of conscience. The luxury and power she so valued had crumbled, leaving behind only the emptiness of her cruel choices. Her story served as a dark counterpoint to the light emanating from the forest ranger's house, a testament that greed cannot stifle kindness. One afternoon, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jose sat on the grass with Gabriel and Lucas, the three of them watching the stars that began to dot the firmament. "Look," Jose said, pointing to the constellation of Orion. "The hunter. He reminds us that there's always someone looking out for us, even when we don't see them." The boys nestled into his arms, feeling the warmth and security he offered them. There was no more fear in their hearts, only the certainty of an unwavering love. The forest, which was once the stage of a cruel abandonment, was now the backdrop to a story of redemption and hope. Jose, Gabriel, and Lucas were living proof that family is built with bonds of affection, not blood, and that overcoming is possible even after the greatest adversities. The human connection, strengthened by compassion and altruism, had triumphed over darkness. They were a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the world, the light of love always finds a way to shine, stronger and more resplendent than ever. The tiger's roar, though distant in time, still echoed in their hearts, a wild melody of protection and a hymn to the life that had been saved.